Mr. Pickerell, can you hear us?
I can.
Okay, am I saying
Can you see me and hear me okay?
Yeah, and Pickerell, how do you pronounce that last name properly?
It's Pickerell, it's English, Pickrell.
Thank you.
In fact, I'm looking at my name here, it looks like my wife's name is on here because this is her account. So I'm not very techie like maybe other people are. Let me just change my name here. I'm doing
Okay,
it
can
right
you go
now.
ahead and you're all right with that. We've got to clarify who you are, but I appreciate that. Can you go ahead and raise your right hand?
1 second, please. Okay, what was your name again, too, please?
My name is Eric Helland. I'm IUB Board Chair.
I see. And you are the IUB, correct? One of the representatives?
Yeah, so Mr. Pickerell, so I'm going to swear you in and then I'm going to turn you over to your attorney. So we don't usually have back and forth. So I appreciate those. But go ahead and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you are about to provide is true and accurate?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Jorde?
Yes, thank you. Would you please state your name?
Yeah, my name is Kent Pickerell.
And Mr. Pickerell, just to set the stage here, you're appearing virtually. We've got the IUB board members and staff, and then you've got lawyers and concerned landowners. Okay, so I'm going to start, and then other folks might have questions. So,
very good.
You have ownership in ground located in Clay County that's being targeted by the proposed hazardous summit pipeline. Is that right?
That is correct.
And previously, you prepared, and my office helped you prepare testimony related to concerns that you have had at that time, and I presume have today, related to this project and the effects on your property and the community at large. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And since that time, we noticed some spelling mistakes, and those have been corrected, and there's been a cleaned up first amended testimony also recently filed, but the substance of the testimony is the same. Is that correct?
That is correct, but I have done some more research since then in preparation for knowing a little bit more about Summit Pipeline and find out who runs it. The CDO, I believe, is Bruce Ratzler, correct?
And Rastetter, I think, is how he pronounces it. But let me just, if you don't mind, focus on the paper, the documents first, and then we can move forward.
Okay.
So at this time, sir, I'm going to offer into evidence both Exhibit 73 and then 649, which is the corrected spelling mistakes version of his pre-filed testimony.
Are there objections?
I have a bit of a concern about 649 because it certainly appears to me that there are changes other than just spelling. When we ran a document compare on it, there were, some of this caused by formatting, but came back with several hundred hits, which honestly I have not had time to explore all of. I would be happy to have no objections to the originally filed testimony, but I'd like to be able to reserve objections that are more than just spelling or typos to what was just filed, I believe, yesterday while we were in the hearing.
And I wouldn't have an objection. I think it is formatting, but I don't have any problem with an objection on that basis. They'll be admitted subject to any factual substantive changes.
Perfect. All right. Duly noted. The board will admit and give it the weight due.
All right, thank you. And then, sir, what we've done is we've admitted your pre-filed testimony, both versions, so those are in the record. Beyond the spelling changes that you have made since the time of your initial pre-filed testimony in approximately July of this year, do you have any updates that you believe are necessary to your testimony?
I believe I have done quite a bit of research on Summit Carbon Solutions. And I'd just like to be very transparent with everybody. And I just have retired from working in Minnesota, moved out to Colorado with my wife because all my grandkids are out here. And I just wanted to let everyone know that I am far enough away from Iowa that I shouldn't be concerned about any summit plumes, but I have studied that and am very concerned that as I am being transparent where I live, that Summit Carbon is not transparent with their information about plumes, and I've heard many comments that they have lied to farm owners like some other corporations have, but I'm not very happy about that. But you know, some of the family farms around here, people have farmed them for generations, and I didn't want to just turn my back on them, even though I'm 13-hour drive away. So I guess it was my choice to come back and testify, you know, in hopes that we can get this corrected here. This, it just seems like it's wrong that an eminent domain is being stamped on this project. It's not, I mean, if I could read a definition of the eminent domain, it refers to the power of the government to take private property.
State your objection.
Again, this is
Mr. Pickerell. Mr. Pickerell.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just sit tight for a minute.
This is not an update. I think various definitions of eminent domain from various sources were surely available prior to the July testimony deadline.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jorde.
Yeah, let me ask a different question.
Thank you.
Sir, you might have an opportunity to get into that in a little bit, but just for my narrow purposes, beyond what we've kind of discussed, have there been any events that happened since the end of July of this year? And I'm not suggesting there should be, but have there been any that cause you to have to update any of your prior testimony?
No, I've read through it and I think it's fairly complete. I do have a copy here.
Okay. And I appreciate that. And so the way the format works is most of the other folks will have the bulk of the questions for you. So I'm going to go ahead and let them talk to you now, okay?
Certainly. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Hike, I see your name tag up. Jumping the gun. All right. Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Pickerell, I'm Wally Taylor. I represent the Sierra Club. And in your written testimony, you first identify that the land has some terraces and that you are concerned about any damage to those terraces. What makes you think that the Summit pipeline would damage those terraces?
Well, I hadn't seen this map until last week. For whatever reason, I have not received any information. My brother and I, at the beginning of when this first came out, decided that we would not have any communication with Summit at all. So any phone calls or texts were always ignored. In fact, I just got a letter from them recently when I went out to California to visit my brother. It was dated October 24th, 2022. And I just received it this last August, 1st of August. So I have not received much information from Summit. And I did get the eminent domain sometime in August or September at my residence in Colorado. But my father was a farm manager for his whole career, managed over 100 farms throughout Minnesota, Iowa, and South Dakota. And he was very into conservation. We have 160 total acres. You're looking at the one on the west side of 310th Avenue. very hilly, and it always had erosion on it. And he spent a lot of time and money tiling the property and putting in these terraces on this one. And across the road, there's another 160 acres, and he has terraces on both the south end of that farm and the north end. And
I guess my question was, why do you think that installing the Summit pipeline would damage those terraces, and whether or not you could repair those terraces?
So I also own a property with my brother in Alta, Iowa, Buena Vista County, the two properties that my family own. And recently, back in 2014, they decided to put in the DAPL pipeline.
That's Dakota Access?
That's correct, Dakota Access from the Bakken oil fields. And that farm was seriously destroyed. I'm not sure people that have been testifying have any other property in that area, but it's been 6 years, and I just talked to the person that we cash rent to, Mike Pedersen, and he said the farm, after everything they've done to it, is just starting to come back and maybe is okay, but not where it was at all. I mean, that was a crime that was made into an eminent domain on that property.
Regarding the drainage tile, are you aware that Summit has said that they would install the pipe at least 2 feet below the drainage tile, and that if any tile were damaged, that Summit would repair it and replace it?
I have heard that, but that is the same thing that happened in Buena Vista County to our other property. They said they would repair it, and there was a company named, I think it's Ellingson, out of Minnesota possibly. And after the pipe was laid, this Jeremy Ellingson came through and tried to get the pipe repaired, and it was not correctly repaired, or because of the soil levels were changed. They promised my brother and myself that they would remove all the layers one at a time. So all the black dirt would be in a pile, and then they would do the other remaining layers. And once the pipe was installed, they would return those layers as it was. So the black dirt would be on top. Problem is, rains came and it got wet and everything got mixed up. And finally, they just pushed everything on top of the pipe with everything mixed. And the compaction of this property still hasn't come out. The yields are way down. I think they said the first year they get 50%, and the second year 40% for their crop losses. It goes down 10 after the fourth year maybe. But it made my brother and my sister-in-law, who is a part owner with me, just made them sick. We had to get LLCs to protect our interest in this so we wouldn't be liable for anything. I'm not sure. I don't believe that the insurance was available because of that. It just made them sick. In fact, we're in the process of selling that farm just because this happened to that farm. They don't want the liability at all with the pipeline. If it leaks from their farm and goes on to some other farm, it's just something that they can't stand anymore. So they're in the process of selling it.
Do you see the map there on the screen?
I do.
Just above the halfway mark north and south, there's a black line that goes horizontally across your property. What is that?
So that is the creek, and what that is an outflow water from Lost Island Lake, and it's one of the big recreation areas in the Ruthven Pickerell Grettinger area that people go to fish, but all that water comes through. I remember when I was a kid that we would used to go down to where Highway 18 and our road, which is now paved, 310th Street, we would fish for bullheads. Just a happy memory for the family that we would do that. So we also have drain tiles that go into that creek just from the farm because there are some wet areas there. And my father being a farm manager, he probably made all these maps. He put a lot of money into the terraces and the tile to make sure it was the best producing farm that he could have with the hills that are on both sides of this farm. We don't have a map. I tried to call the Clay County Recorder recently, and they have nothing on file. I don't know how that's going to be taken care of, because if we aren't there to watch, the excavation for the tile or the pipeline, how do we know if that actually is going to be replaced? Back to Ellingson again, when he worked on the Union Vista property, they tried to do that they tried to do it, but it wasn't successful. And then the areas that were not wet before had water standing on them. Again, I talked to Mike Pedersen, and he told me that they contacted, through my brother and Mike Pedersen, contacted it'd be Dakota Access, and they said just get somebody to have it fixed. So my brother contacted, I believe it was Doug Weatherall from Peterson, and he came out and worked on it and did finally get it correctly fixed. But my brother had to pay for that out of their own pocket, and I hope the farmers that are maybe affected by this, hopefully this does not go into eminent domain, because that would be a mistake like the first one was with Dakota Access, and that mistake can't happen again. So he did do that, but it cost him thousands of dollars out of his own pocket. And the Dakota Access, it took months and months to get reimbursed for that. So, we aren't heavily relying on this like some farmers are in Iowa, but, dirt farmers in Iowa probably don't have money and access to pay for a large tile project to save their farm. Like we were fortunate, my brother was able to cover that. But Dakota Access didn't stand by and say, yeah, we're going to fix this for you. They just told our family, find someone and get it fixed, and we'll reimburse.
Your prepared testimony also indicated there's an occupied house adjacent to the land. Can you tell us where that is on the map of that house?
Yes, I can. So there are actually two occupied houses near. So on the farm itself, there is the original farmstead where our family grew up on from the 50s when my parents purchased the property. And it was either 3 or 4 years ago, my brother and I decided that after renting this for 10, 15, 20 years, after our parents had left, that we probably needed to sell it. So we had some issues with some renters, and there's always repairs and putting new roofs on the farm or the barn and the house, and we'd have to repaint. So it just became more of a headache than it was worse. So we decided to sell the farmstead, and I'm just sick about it now because it's a young family that were renting from us, and they said we'd really like to have a property of our own. And it's a young man and his wife. They have 3 or 4 young kids under 7 that are living in that house. And Nathan's wife homeschools the kids, so those kids aren't going to be gone at school. If ever there's a leak in the carbon pipe and there is the explosion, they wouldn't have a chance. I believe they are like 1,900 feet away from that when they drew the measurement on this.
Is that pardon me, is that the house that's shown on the map that's just on the west edge of the red area?
No, I'm sorry, no. So it's on the 310th Avenue. If you look at your picture, it'd be the southeast corner of your map. I should have been more clear about that.
Yeah, maybe we need to zoom out a little bit.
There we go. So our farm is on both sides of 310th Avenue, which comes south of Highway 18, and it's right to the right, a couple inches on the map from the proposed pipeline. That's the Terrell corner in Highway 18 there.
Okay.
So my wife and I are just sick about putting this family in possible harm's way, which I don't see how an eminent domain could be in the cards for this, because this is endangering Iowans. There could be an explosion at any time. I have seen the video from the one that happened in Mississippi, and I think it was 2000. And so Summit has not really told us if it's going to be an 8-inch, a 10-inch, a 24-inch, but I think they can put whatever size they want, since they are not being, let's say, transparent about this and honest with their plumes, with the explosions. So if it's a 24-inch pipe that is placed there, and for some reason that pipe is fractured and there's an explosion, that could be 3,000 foot plume or 5,000. I don't know. I haven't been able to study all that, but I know Illinois had some studies that I read about. And that family, if she was homeschooling that day, sometime during the day, that would overtake them in seconds.
Did you ever talk to a land agent or other representative from Summit about an alternative route?
I did not, but if I would have said around our farm. We wouldn't have wanted to have anything to do with that. Of course, that would just put it in our neighbor's farm. So I chose not to speak with anybody. In fact, I had no verbal contact with any of them.
Did your brother, perhaps?
He did not, that I know of. Could we also talk about this farm right to the west of my, I guess the property, the red area?
Well,
go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
You're saying the property just to the west of the red area?
Yes.
Okay. Who owns that?
I just found out the last couple days that it's a Sandy Thomas, I believe. Let me see if I can find my note here on that. Yeah, Sandy Thomas. And I called and left her a message, and she got back to me. And she said that her and her family heard on TV, KTIV or something out of Sioux City, that the pipeline had stopped with their production, or they shut it down, I guess. And I believe she is referring to the Navigator pipeline that Illinois would not allow to have the carbon sequestered into their state. So I kind of informed her that, no, sorry, but the Summit pipeline is still having hearings with the Iowa Utility Board. And they still plan on going through this area if they're granted eminent domain, which I hope this will not happen. It should not happen. It was a mistake that the Dakota access was made into an eminent domain. But also looking at this red area, it looks like the eminent, or the, is that right, eminent domain that they propose goes across her driveway, and it also intersects half of her garage. And I'm assuming that's a mistake, because I want assurance from Summit that they will not be using her driveway for construction.
It looks like the pipeline would go north and south on the east edge of your property. Is that correct?
On the east edge of that red
Right.
eminent domain area. But her property is right to the west of our fence line, and actually that eminent domain coloring is on to their, including their driveway. Was that a mistake? Can someone actually clarify that for me?
I certainly
And she
can.
has also not had any contact with Summit at all.
Okay.
Or am I not to ask questions? Is that correct?
Well, you can ask, but I can't answer that one. My understanding is the red area is your property that is being impacted by the Summit pipeline route.
Proposed property. The proposed eminent domain is what I
right.
meant. But that is our property, except it does go across her driveway and a lot of her property on there. Which is my concern. I didn't see this until yesterday.
Okay. So where would her driveway be?
If you look, so if you go the road up top on the north side of that, past the ditch, is Highway 18. So her access to her driveway and her house is just about all the way on the left side of that red
I see.
eminent domain. Yes, thank you, where you put
Yeah.
that. So that is her driveway, her trees. I mean, our property ends at the fence post, technically, for our land property.
Okay. Yeah, that clarifies that. Thank you. And that's all the questions I have.
Thank you.
Ms. Gruenhagen?
Hi, Mr. Pickerell. My name is Chris Gruenhagen, and I'm with the Iowa Farm Bureau, and I just have a couple of follow-up questions for you. The grassy area in the southeast corner of your parcel, is that in CRP?
Yes.
Is that in CRP, or how is that used there?
We tried to get that in this last year or two, and because we would have to, I mean, my brother is in California, I'm in Colorado now and was in Minnesota. We weren't close enough to maintain that, and they wanted it burned off, and we thought it would have been too cumbersome. We had tried, and it used to be in CRP, but I'm not sure what happened. So that is actually just pasture land right now.
Is that
And the
past?
tenants own if you see all the treed area, and there are like 3 sets of bins there also. And their property is right on that western border of the trees.
So is this farm rented out then?
The farm is cash rented. It's been in the family that has either rented it or sharecropped with my father since my dad was a farm manager. He managed all that, and I think this is a 3rd generation of farmers that are renting this cash crop or a cash rental.
So is that
The
Mr.
name is Henderson, Bruce Henderson, and he's the grandson of the guy that first started it. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. That you answered my next question I was going to ask you, so it's just fine. And so it is. You're saying it's currently cash rented then?
It is, and he is also opposed to the pipeline, from what I understand with my conversation with him.
And if there's any yield loss in the area of the pipeline, I know you talked about your Dakota or your Buena Vista property. Would any damage payments go to him then for any crop yield loss?
I believe that that's how that would work. it'd probably be up for discussion. Part of it goes to us if we give him a reduction on his rent because of that. So, I mean, for a lot of these farmers, that's going to make or break, you know, how their livelihood, you know, is just farming like people do. But yeah, we would make it fair, however it needs to be done. But I'm assuming that, like Dakota Access they did some payments for the first 5 years. I think it was 50% the first year, 40 the next year, all the way down to 0. Which isn't enough to cover it because the damage they did to the Alta property in Buena Vista with Dakota Access just devastated that land. They had to go back and try to remove the compaction. There were ruts in where the pipe was, and they had to bring, I think they said 10 semi-trucks of black dirt in to fill that in. And one of the problems the renter or the farmer that rented our land in Buena Vista said that there is only a road. So if you look at the Highway 18 on this one, our property would be against a road that's on the north side of the property. So they could access that farm. It was diagonal across there. So the problem is they could not get over the pipeline because of all the ruts with their equipment to do the planting, disking, harvesting, you know, what they do as a farm. So I'm not a technical farmer, so I don't know that much how they would do it, but Dakota Access finally built them a temporary access on one of the sides of the farm so they could actually get to it. And I'm sure all these farmers in Iowa that are going to be affected, not that this pipeline is going to go through, but if it happened for some reason, and it better not, because there's no reason that this is an eminent domain. This is purely profit driven by Bruce Rastatter. It's going to make him from a millionaire to a billionaire. And that's not for what Iowa stands for. I think Iowa should be looking for their people and having an eminent domain.
This is not responsive to the question. This is just opinions being stated as a soliloquy, but it's not responsive to any question on the table.
Okay, Ms. Rehagen, do you want to touch on that?
I will ask my next question.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Yep. You mentioned the Dakota Access, that the yield damages lasted more than the 5 years. If the crop damages for this particular pipeline were to last more than the 3 years in their crop damage statement, would you expect Summit to pay for those crop yield losses?
Excuse me. Wait a minute. Did you say 3 years? Is that what Summit has said?
Let me finish my question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. If the crop damages or crop yield loss would last longer than 3 years, would you want Summit to pay for those yield losses for the entire time that you have yield losses there?
Absolutely. If they're making that much money off of this project, of course they should. They should stand by whatever damage they cause.
Does the field extend to the east of the red area?
Yes, it does. It goes all the way to 310th Avenue. When they zoomed out, you could see that paved road. It used to be a gravel road when I was growing up. So that intersection right to the kind of the northwest corner, right south of that other farm entrance or a house entrance, that is the Terrell corner right there. So our farm is to the left of that 310th, all the way to the edge, just not quite to the edge of that red on the left. And then it is on, if you can zoom out, okay, no, you're there. So there's a barn also. There's another farm showing, but that's not mine. So if you look at all that green 2 inches from the bottom of the picture, that's the next door neighbors, which I believe is Harley Rouse. And then we have the property also on the east side of 310th Avenue. And it goes from Highway 18 down to, it's either a fence or a creek on the south side. that's be I'm not sure if it's 80, yeah, it should be about 80 acres on that side.
If your farm tenant,
There's terraces on, there is terraces not too far from 18 on that side, and then on the other end of the farm, the south end.
why don't I go ahead and ask my next question here? If your farm tenant has difficulty accessing that property, would you expect Summit to establish an access?
Well, yes, I would, yes.
And where is the current access to that field?
I believe, so the creek, of course, kind of divides that farm there. So they don't go over the creek, but I think there is, right kind of where that pipeline is. I thought there was a road or an access there. I am not sure, but it's possible that they go in a little ways in the driveway of our neighbors there and access that field. I guess I don't have the answer to that. It's been so long since I've been in that area.
And then just one final question. Did Summit's land agents ever ask you or your brother whether you had a farm tenant on the property?
They did not. We did not have contact with them. A tenant, you're meaning a cash renter, right? Same concept?
A lessee, yes.
Yes, a leasing, correct. Mm-hmm. No, they did not that I know of, and I don't believe my brother had any contact with any of the agents.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Ms. Coles?
Good afternoon, Mr. Pickerell. I'm Jean Colas. I'm also a landowner. I just have a few questions. You indicated that on both sides, I believe on the east and west sides of your property, that it's a hilly area?
Correct, yes.
Is the hilly area where the proposed pipeline is going through?
Now, in order to my recollection, since I haven't been there quite often, there could be some hills on the south end of the eminent domain. It could be sloping land, that's possible. But I know there's a lot of hills kind of right northwest of the farmstead there. And that's where those terraces you can see on your map.
Do you have concern?
I believe it does slope down some, yes.
Do you have concern that the pipeline is going through a waterway?
Well, I do. I wasn't sure exactly if they're going under it or over it, or, yeah, definitely will disrupt that. And then the tiles, we don't know where any of the tiles are. And I'm not sure who's going to be monitoring the installation of the pipe to see if, okay, they went through a tile, how are they going to know where to replace that at? I have some big concerns about that. I know my father, being a conservation farm manager, he was very, I guess, keyed in on where tiles should be to keep the wetland dry.
You seem to be very concerned about the safety of the pipeline. To the point of where you might actually sell that property because you consider it more of a liability than an asset. Is that true?
That's a possibility, yes.
Do you think that having a pipeline, a hazardous CO2 pipeline to your property, will devalue the...
Oh, yes. I wrote that in my my PFT, I guess, my pre-filed testimony. Yeah, and who would want to buy a pipe or a farm that would have a potentially hazardous pipeline on it? That doesn't even make sense. And why the state of Iowa would even consider an eminent domain on this. Though I did do some research, if I can just say that, the CEO of Summit has contributed over $1.2 million.
State the objection.
Again, this is not responsive.
Branstead, I think
Mr.
This is not
Mr.
responsive
Hold on,
to the
hold on,
question.
Mr. Dubinsky. So, Mr. Pickerell, appreciate it, but when there's an objection, we just have to pause and then sort it out and then get back to where we were.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
It's okay. Go ahead, Mr. Dubinsky, your objection.
Again, this is not responsive to any question on the table. This is just the witness adding additional supplemental direct.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Colas, do you have a response to that objection?
That's okay.
Okay, thank you. That objection's sustained. Go ahead with your next question.
Okay, related to putting your property up for sale, do you think that there are several properties in Iowa that are up for sale that yours would be sold at a lower price because of the hazardous pipeline?
I would have no doubt that that would happen.
Would you purchase a property with a hazardous CO2 pipeline on it?
Of course not. I mean, nobody in their right mind would purchase something that has a hazardous pipeline that at any time could puncture if a tractor went over it and a rock went through the side of that pipe. And we don't even know if it's an 8-inch, 10-inch, 12-inch, or 24-inch. Apparently they can do whatever they want because Summit has not been forthcoming and transparent about what they're doing. I've done a lot of research, and I mean, I followed in the Star Tribune about the eminent domain. Pipelines hit snag eminent domain. I have done a lot of research, and apparently I'm not able to share any of that about how the contributions.
Objection, Your Honor.
State the objection.
Oh, that's right.
Again,
I forgot about that.
The fact that this witness has done research that did not get put into their direct testimony doesn't mean that he just gets to add it at will here when it's not responsive to a question that's on the table.
Ms. Colas.
So I shouldn't say that there's been
Mr. Pickerell.
1-2
Mr.
million.
Pickerell.
Okay.
Ms. Colas, do you have a response to that objection?
Your Honor, I would move to strike.
Okay.
I'll ask another question.
Hold on. We have a motion to
Sorry.
strike there.
That the witness willfully ignored the chair to go ahead and answer the question. I think that should be stricken from the record.
Okay. That answer will be stricken from the record. Ms. Colas, next question.
Are you concerned that they're going ahead with eminent domain, even though North Dakota and South Dakota have refused a permit to build a pipeline or sequestration in those states?
I am very concerned about that. I grew up in Iowa and I thought they had a great education, and Governor Bob Ray was a governor when I was there, and I just loved the state. There wasn't anything I disliked about it, even though my career took me to Minnesota and then the grandkids took me to Colorado.
Do you
I
feel
just think it's wrong, and I think if you follow the money trail, it just kind of smells bad. I mean, the governors appoint the IUB, other states, they are voted in. So, I mean, I don't know why Iowa has people that are appointed by the governor, and then the governor turns and works for Summit Carbon as an advisor. I mean, it just seems wrong that, okay, you're governor for the longest career of governors in the United States, and then you ambassador to China, then the next thing you know, he's on the payroll for Summit Carbon. I mean, it just doesn't seem right. It smells like there's a money trail someplace, and it's just wrong.
you just brought up, are you concerned about the foreign ownership of Summit Carbon Solutions pipeline?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what's next? I mean, apparently the eminent domain goes for the rest of, time. So they can keep that and they can transport anything they want through it. And even water. I mean, water's a precious commodity, and probably in the next 50 to 100 years, water is going to be more expensive than your fossil fuel gasoline and oil. There's other ways to navigate our energy than go into the fossil fuel. There's wind energy, there's solar energy, there's hydro energy, and it's just wrong that people are exploiting the state of Iowa and the farmers that have to live through this this painful process of going through and testifying over lands that are 3 and 4 generations old. It's just wrong. I'm not sure how even the IUB and the state of Iowa lives with themselves.
Are you concerned that at the risk of Iowa landowners, that construction of the CO2 hazardous pipeline, if it does go through sequestration, that the end product can be used for enhanced energy recovery?
Objection, Your Honor.
State the objection.
The purpose of the landowner testimony here at the hearing is to talk about their specific parcels, the enhanced oil recovery, which Summit's already testified is not going to happen, but it's outside of this board's jurisdiction. It's outside of the scope of the proceeding.
Ms. Colas, do you have a response to the objection?
Well, I think it's going to be transporting critical CO2 hazardous gas through their property, which puts them at risk for sequestration. And
So Mrs. Colas, I just need you to address the objection, not provide your position on the issue. So why
I guess
you're asking that question and how it relates to the pre-filed testimony?
how it relates to his pre-filed testimony, I don't know. I didn't see his pre-filed testimony.
Okay.
You know, I did write that under point 5 if I can address that. Can I do that?
Not really.
I said, oh wait,
Mr.
has everybody read the
Mr.
pre-filed
Pickerell, Mr.
testimony?
Pickerell.
Yes, it's Pickerell.
Pickerell, I
Thank you.
apologize. Appreciate
Thank
you being
you, no
here today.
problem.
We just got to sort this out. We'll get right back to you. Okay, Ms. Colas, did you want to rephrase the question, ask it just a little differently? We're trying to work with you.
Do you believe that the purpose of the proposed pipeline and its sequestration actually reduces CO2 emissions as effectively as Summit proposes?
All the research that I have done on this says that this is probably a good idea, but there's no evidence that that actually reduces the CO2. It is basically a moneymaker for someone that owns ethanol plants. But I did read that the ethanol industry possibly could be having problems, and just because of competition. But
Objection,
I
Your Honor.
also read
State
that
the
in the last
objection.
year,
State the objection.
that
Mr. Pickerell.
I'm sorry.
Just finish.
The
State the objection.
question was whether or not the witness believed that the pipeline would achieve the CO2 reductions that it promotes. This answer is now on the economics of the ethanol industry, which are not related or responsive to the question.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Colas?
I can re-answer if you'd like.
We're going to let Ms. Colas, who's
Okay.
running this cross-examination, choose to make her argument the way she'd like to within the rules. So, Ms. Colas, go ahead.
Okay, do you believe that the capture facility that will be built with our public funds and our taxes, that the end product is owned by another LLC of Summit Carbon Solutions and is independent, and that not 100% of the gas that is going through sequestration will be pumped to a sequestration site using 45Q, that there will be leftover product?
I did not know that, but I do not think that'll help our CO2 problem and our climate issues.
Do you think that Summit's, the actual capture facility would in part utilize some of that captured CO2 gas and transport it to areas that could be used for enhanced oil recovery or for carbon dioxide, for other products?
Oh yeah, I mean, they haven't been transparent about anything, so anything could happen with this pipeline and everything that's being transported in there. I'm concerned that maybe water will be taken from the state of Iowa and shipped overseas or other parts of the country that do not have water, just to make some money on that.
Then you are aware that wherever there is an ethanol plant, that Summit Carbon Solution is requesting a permit for a huge amount, millions of gallons of water to be used for this process per facility per year.
I have heard that. I'm very concerned about it because I don't think Iowa's aquifer could support that. I think that's just stealing water from Iowa.
Do you
I think
feel
that's wrong, and I can't believe anyone would allow that to happen to our state unless they're actually being paid very well for that.
do you feel it's the responsibility of the Iowa Utility Board to take our natural resources of water and the health and well-being of our citizens and the damage it can do to our land into consideration before they even before they determine whether or not a permit should be approved?
Absolutely. I believe a mistake was made when Dakota Access was granted immunity, or eminent domain, I'm sorry. And, you know, maybe that's just because Governor Branstad appointed the IUB that voted on that. So I'm not sure where the money goes, but there's got to be money exchanging hands someplace to get the correct votes. But, you know, what I think might be in danger is politicians that have caused this to happen. They're going to be voted out of office, I believe, because I don't think they're making any kind of right decision, especially on the Dakota Access, and even presenting this to the IUB for an eminent domain. This is not something that would help out the state of Iowa and allow people to better themselves, or you're just causing heartbreak and mental anguish for farmers that's all they've done their whole life is farm the dirt. Then they want to make money off these farmers in a get-rich scheme because they're getting carbon credits that they're going to trade to California with the petroleum companies. So it just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
So if you feel that Iowans are being treated unfairly because the Iowa Utility Board is appointed and not elected, therefore they have no accountability to the citizens of the United States.
Objection, Your Honor.
State the objection.
I
State the
agree.
objection.
Just a lot of things objectionable there, for reasons we've been talking about all day. That is not a proper cross question. That is eliciting supplemental direct. I understand that both Ms. Colas and the witness have a lot of opinions about this project, but that does not mean that this is just a free-flowing comment hearing.
Okay. Ms. Colas, do you have a comment on the objection before we rule on the objection?
I'll just make another question.
That sounds like a good idea. Thank you.
Do you think that the decision in North Dakota was made because they were elected officials?
Objection.
State the objection.
I believe that
It
is
just
correct.
has-
I had mentioned
No,
that
we're working on the
earlier.
objection, Mr. Pickerell.
No relevance to any decision criteria that Chapter 479B puts in front of this board. The witness's opinion on why North Dakota does something in a particular way under a different legal regime is just simply not relevant evidence in this case.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Colas, if you have a quick response to that objection, then I have to.
Well, I think it's important, but I guess I'm being shut down, so I stop. I thought it was very important.
Hold on.
So that's the pipeline to nowhere then, correct?
Mr. Pickerell, not yet. You can respond to questions, but not open mic.
Oh, I had a pet over here I was talking to. I'm sorry.
Here. Okay, board needs about 5 minutes, and might be helpful for everybody to take a 5-minute break real quick. So we will be right back. Ms. Colas, you still have the witness. So we will just go off the record for 5-10 minutes. Be right back. Board Member Burns is on his way to Clear Lake for the IPL rate case public hearing. And so with that, Ms. Coles, we will go back to you for cross-examination. And hopefully we can try to keep this a little bit tighter as we go forward.
I'll try.
May I say something? I apologize if I was out of line.
I appreciate that.
Down.
Nope, just trying to reply to the lawyers, but thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Coles.
I guess I'm going to ask the question, do you feel that the process of eminent domain has been fair?
I think that this has nothing to do with eminent domain, that it will help the people of Iowa. From what I understood, I did do some research and I did look at the definition. And I know that the 4 top eminent domain things are the Hoover Dam, Central Park in New York City. And there are one more thing that I can't remember right now, but I mean, that's for the good of all people. And it doesn't harm anybody in the process that I could see.
Okay.
The Hoover Dam provided hydroelectric power, and I think that's something that we need, and it's probably less polluting than fossil fuels and petroleum. I don't know. Coal.
So your opinion is that being allowed construction of a CO2 pipeline will actually be harmful to residents and the land and our natural resources?
Absolutely. It's a potential dangerous pipeline that's putting across the state of Iowa. From all I can see, it's all profit driven. I don't think it's going to help the people of Iowa in one least bit. I talked to my renter down in Alta today, and he said, I have seen nothing that would help anybody in Iowa except the short-term jobs they had. That pipeline of oil goes across the state of Iowa from North Dakota to Illinois. There's nothing that pipeline helps the state of Iowa that I can see unless it's taxes.
Thank you, Mr. Pickerell. No further questions.
Thank you.
Ms. Hike?
Hello, Mr. Pickerell. I'm Chris Hike. I'm a landowner. Just a quick question. I've noticed in your testimony that you've spent hundreds of hours in going over articles and research. Do you feel with this time-consuming hazardous pipeline project should be returned with a payment from Summit for your time?
I wouldn't see why not, because I had nothing to do with the beginning of this pipeline, and it was kind of pushed down our throats to take care of this, to make sure we can defend our own property. It's just inherently wrong as far as I can see, without making any other comments. I just think it's wrong. They've taken time away from everybody, hundreds of hours. People should be farming their farm, and it's sad. I mean, all for profit. That's all I can see that this will do, is profit.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, no other questions? Mr. Jorde for redirect.
Yes, thank you. Sir, you talked quite a bit about DAPL, Dakota Access, and the problems with working in various conditions that then led to other issues as well as tile. Are you, I take it then, familiar with what the conditions looked like and understand generally what a mess that was?
Well, it was. The trenches were dug, and originally they told my brother and myself, or mostly my brother, that the land would be removed layer by layer, and the black dirt would be preserved in an area pushed off by bulldozers, and then the other layers would be separated also. And then when the pipeline was finished being placed, the same thing would happen in a reverse order, and the black dirt would end up on top. And I think I mentioned earlier that that did not happen because of the rains and unforeseen things, but, you know, they were just scrambling to get that pipeline covered so they could have that started. I believe it was 2017 it started. But it was a mess, and like I said, when the soil finally worked away around the pipe, there was such ruts they could not get across it, and 10 semi-trucks came in with black dirt and filled that, which I believe Dakota Access paid for.
Could we pull up, please, Exhibit 579?
If I can add, the crop yields were very low for that too. I mean, in addition, and they still are. They're okay, is what the tenant has said now.
And in terms of the reduction in yield, that's attributed to and following the installation of and the work on the Dakota Access Pipeline, correct?
That's correct. I think the soils were mixed up, and with the rain and stuff, it was just a mess. The compaction was unbelievable. I've never seen anything like that before. And they tried to go back into the property to aerate where the bulldozers came up and down on that.
Now, sir, on the screen, there is an exhibit, and can you see that photo on your computer?
Sort of, yes. Heavy equipment is driving on topsoil, compacting it, yes.
Okay.
No topsoil was removed, okay?
And
yes.
Yep, great. And I just am going to show you just a couple photos and see if those are similar to what you experienced on the Dakota Access project. If we could look at page 14, please. And you know,
my gosh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
And you had talked about concerns about tile and this Ellingston outfit out of Minnesota. Do you understand that that's the same company that Summit is going to be working with if this goes through?
I was told that, and, you know, like I said, that they had to call another tile company, and their name was, I think it was Doug Weatherall from Peterson, Iowa, and he eventually did get it fixed, but they were told that that tile would be replaced exactly how it was. And I don't know if it was old clay tile or what it was. I wasn't familiar. Again, my father purchased that farm and he managed it, and he did what he had to do to keep that property dry and tiling the property properly. I'm sorry.
And so is Exhibit 14, or pardon me, the exhibit we're looking at, 579, page 14. What we're looking at there is that's so similar to what you are aware of happened on your ground and ground near you. Is that right?
It was very similar, and they had to provide. It looks like these ties or the wood. It looks like it's a temporary driveway to get across these areas so the farmers can access their farm. I'm just afraid this will happen. I mean, hopefully this will not go through, but if ever this ever happens to another state or whatever, I just hope this doesn't happen ever again.
And then if we could go to page 17, please. And on page 17, sir, do you see how the various layers of soil are just kind of piled around and they're kind of eroding into each other and there's no screening? Is that also similar with your experience?
Yes, I would agree with that.
And do you understand that Dakota Access made all the same promises that Summit has made here, that they're going to do the right thing and everything's going to be okay and everything's going to return to the way it was? You familiar with that?
Indeed, and I see that there's black dirt on the bottom there and then clay on top, and of course it just mixes in together and they cannot replace it like they properly should. And my brother and I, we talked about it, and it's like they lied to us. They said that the topsoil would be separated when they first came in to begin the project, and it would be piled up and taken care of, and then the other layers would be separated, and it would go back in the reverse order that it came out. And that was just a big lie, which is what I think is happening to the land agents that have said all these other lies to the farmers when they're trying to get an agreement or easement from them.
And if we could look at page 49, please. And so,
Oh my God.
and is this also similar with the soils mixing and working in wet conditions?
Oh, absolutely. And you can't predict the weather. And this isn't our farm, is it? I mean, it does look real close, but I didn't have an aerial view. But it was a mess. It was muddy. And that just increases the compaction of the ground. I mean, to plant corn or beans on there, you just can't do it with that compaction. They're destroying the land for many years until it comes back. Our farm operator talked to Dakota Access, and they had convinced them to put tons, I'm not sure if it was 10 or 20 tons of manure to mix it in to get the ground aerated again and get some, I can think of the word, just a higher yield, because it was so bad the first few years. And they did bring that in. But too little, too late, once you destroy something. That should never have been an eminent domain. My brother and sister-in-law are sick about it, and that's why that farm will be up for sale within several weeks.
And is it your perspective, sir, that if a landowner would like to be confronted with this type of abuse of their land, that it should be their choice, but it shouldn't be something forced upon a landowner?
Oh, absolutely. This is in no way should even resemble an eminent domain. Again, I believe, if I read this right, an eminent domain is supposed to be for the good of the state or the area, like a public school or a hospital. If you have to condemn a little land to have a hospital or a public school, this is not it. Or a gas line that heats people's houses. This, again, both of these examples are pure profit that makes people rich.
Do you believe,
at the expense of the farmers, if I can add that, that's all.
Certainly. Do you believe it's either publicly convenient or publicly necessary for the governor, Kim Reynolds, and Mr. Rastetter to be having private meetings and phone calls and get-togethers about this project and other desires of Mr. Rastetter?
Absolutely not.
Would you agree that instead of propping up the ethanol industry, Iowans would be better served by focusing their efforts on finding a successor and a more sustainable path for Iowa agriculture?
I agree with that, yes. And also I found out with some of my research I did, if I'm okay to add this, that the largest competitor to the Iowa, Minnesota, South Dakota ethanol plants turns out to be it's in Brazil, which is also owned by Bruce Rastetter.
Thank you.
I'm surprised he's competing against himself, but it doesn't seem right that they're trying to prop up the ethanol industry by doing CO2 sequestering. It's just a glorified high school experiment, what I've been told. And it's not going to create any health or any change of the climate. It's just puts money in people's pockets. And also, they can transport whatever they want through those lines forever. They can change it to water. I'm not sure what else they could use, but I'm sure there's something that these guys have been thinking about that they're going to use it for down the road other than CO2. Just my guess.
Sir, I appreciate that, and I think I might have a couple weeks ago offered $5.79, but if I didn't, I want to offer $5.79.
Can I ask what those are pictures of?
They're pictures of various Iowa farms during and post DAPL construction that show all the errors of the DAPL contractors and subcontractors.
And do we know what farms they are?
I can give you the Yeah, Johnson, BO-028-000 was the property identifier, and the pictures taken in September 2016.
September 2016, you said?
Yes.
And those are all Laverne Johnson.
I can't specify if they are all, but the bulk of them are.
No objection.
Mr. Jorde?
Yes.
So, hold on. With no objection to the submission, the board will admit and give it the weight due.
Thank you. And I'm just winding down here. So, was there anything else from the questioning that you were asked on cross-examination that you needed to clarify?
Well, I just appreciate you showing those pictures, because that's exactly what we went through in Buena Vista County with the property down there. And I just think that other people that are watching this could kind of predict what's going to happen to their farm by seeing that. I didn't know this ahead of time when they did the Buena Vista property with Dakota Access Pipeline. So it just kind of gives people a foresight what might happen to their farm 3-4 generations old. I just appreciate you putting that out there for people.
Thank you for your testimony. I don't have anything further, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Pickerell. You are dismissed. Mr. Jorde, your next witness.
Della Curtis, who will also be appearing virtually.
Okay, thank you. It is our intent to just kind of go through everybody today, so if you need to move up somebody that's here, let us know. Otherwise, we'll just keep plugging away.
And yes, and for the persons we had available today, it'll be Miss Curtis and then Denise Tyndall, and Mr. White isn't going to be able to join us today. So we have 2 more witnesses today is what I'm saying.
Okay, and Eugene Schlitz?
Well, did I get off my list here? That was Mary Powell on behalf of the Benita Schlitz Revocable Trust. Yes.
Okay. So we just have, not just, but we have Della Curtis and Denise Tyndall today.
Correct.
Okay. Very good. Okay. And can you make sure, help me pronounce your last name? Whoa. That was quick. Okay, we'll just go off the record for 5 minutes while we get her spun back up.